Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Crosshairs, the program at ThePrint, where we discuss the pressing national security or regional security affair of the week. We're recording on a Sunday, just as Amritpal Singh, the revanchist preacher from Punjab, has been arrested and is on his way to prison in Guwahati. I'll be speaking with Dr. Ajay Sahni, who's probably followed the Khalistan story closer than anyone else in India, to try and unpack the significance of what's happened and what the implications of these events might be for us in coming days. So I'll put this as politely as I can, Ajay. You know, I'm famously polite. Was this a flatulent outburst that dissipated dramatically this entire Amritpal story? Or is this is there a lurking Khalistani miasma that we're going to be smelling over Punjab for some length to come? Tell us.
Look, I think, and this is something we've discussed earlier also, I have written about it repeatedly. The Amritpal story had been enormously exaggerated, enormously, as you say, inflated. And this is rife, you know, if you see the Punjabi media, if you see the local discussions, they are overwhelmed by conspiracy theories. The whole idea that state agencies are behind this, that this is part of a tussle between center and state, etc., etc. None of this is verifiable, but very certainly one can say that there is so much in the state's responses that seems to suggest that far more than Amritpal Singh's own, shall we say, capacities, capabilities, and image, was a buildup of these capacities and capabilities and images by the exaggeration of his offenses, of his activities, and of course, after his extraordinary escape from, a coordinated operation to capture him, the continuous theater of leaks and plants that we have seen over more than the past 1 month. And again, very crucially, I just want to add one point on this. The application of the National Security Act on Amritpal and his group, small group of his associates. You see, at no stage what is the National Security Act? It gives out two messages. One, that this individual or group to whom it is being applied, against whom it is being applied, is a threat to national security. And second, that the state's normal capabilities and capacities of policing, of investigation, of prosecution and adjudication have in some sense collapsed before the enormity of this individual or group's activities, as a result of which normal laws cannot be applied, and therefore this special law is to be applied. And I would like to say that the application of the NSA and the transportation of these individuals from Punjab to Dibrugarh, far away Assam, are part of this continuing exaggerated narrative that I can find no justification of in terms of Amritpal Singh and his group's actual activities on the ground.
So it's almost, I couldn't agree more. It's almost as if someone's taking a inflatable toy dinosaur and pumping it up desperately in the hope that some ferocious monster will emerge at the end, because Amritpal's activities, such as they were, fall squarely within the activities of what you might call, or what you have called, in fact, the Panthic audience in Punjab, this right-wing constituency, who have valorized, praised Bhindranwale, praised the assassins of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, periodically, but without having any apparent destabilizing impact on Punjab's polity or setting the state on fire or anything like that. And in this case as well, a tame ending. Amritpal giving I hesitate to use the words, but not very inspiring speech, and announcing his surrender. In a manner that suggests that he had given up expecting there would be mobs of the faithful out to raise him on their shoulders and make him their hero. What accounts, in your view, for this fear which stalks Indian policy? Was it the farmers' movement and the large crowds that we saw out scaring some people about its potentiality? Is it some generational leadership problem? Understanding that, look, the Khalistan movement in that form is dead and buried, and while there may be many challenges ahead, that those particular challenges are not there. What is it?
Well, I'm not very sure it's fair. I think it's part of a very, very, shall we say, deliberate narrative, which is intended to create polarization between communities. It is a bogey that we are trying to create of Khalistan at all times in order to consolidate a particular vote bank. And this bogey also favors those who are trying to appeal to the other community, which is the minority Sikhs, by saying that, look, we are being oppressed, etc., etc. So I think this is all part of the dynamic of polarizing politics, which is essential or integral to the nature of politics in this country today. As far as fear is concerned, I don't really know. Simranjit Singh Mann, who is, again, someone who talks about Khalistan openly and whose activities, I would suggest, apart from the Ajnala incident engineered by Amritpal Singh, whose rhetoric is no different. But he sits in parliament today. He's a member of parliament today. So, again, but he comes up with a very interesting little anecdote. He's enjoying himself nowadays. Sudden, unexpected successes after decades of neglect. So he comes up with this
basking in the media sunshine.
Yes.
If I may say, he's basking in the media sunshine.
He's basking in media sunshine. And he comes up with this little story. He's laughing all the way through. And he says, there is a Bania lying sitting there, weeping, and a Jat lying beaten up and unconscious on the ground. So people come up to him and say, why are you weeping? You've beaten this man up. He's down. He's unconscious on the ground. So why are you weeping? Because when he gets up, he's going to beat me up. That is the actual relationship between the Indian state and the Sikhs. So if there is fear, I think it may be part of a culturally irrational element where we have this constant thing. One incident happens, the 1980s are back. Some few people raise the slogan of Khalistan, the 1980s are back. There are two elements here that I see. One is people who are absolutely ignorant of the situation in the 1980s. So you can say what you want because you have a sense that, there were troubles in the 1980s and some troubles are visible today. So we can draw an analogy. And the other is, we are back to what I said earlier, deliberate mischief. Trying to create an exaggerated bogey.
Now, there is one, I'd respectfully suggest, one sort of caveat to this, which is that the idea of Khalistan has proved remarkably durable among parts of the Sikh diaspora in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom. And there seem to be a couple of different theories about why this is the case. Of course, Amritpal's own wife shows up in her early 20s, much too young to be getting married, in my conservative opinion. She should be off doing her studies somewhere, but shows up attracted by this radicalism from a very well-to-do home in the United Kingdom and decides to live in this village in Punjab. Is this telling us more about is this telling us about the rise of a Khalistan that looks outwards, that is a diaspora that is willing and ready to fund an armed struggle in India? Or is this a diaspora that is suffering from the various cultural neuroses and anxieties that come from being a marginalized minority in some ways in these countries and looking for some sort of cause to define themselves against the communities they now live in? In other words, I mean, if I'll distill that further, are they a national security threat, or are they just a community having a moment in the diaspora, and they will get through their moment as and when they do.
If you look at diaspora communities across the world, I'm not just talking about Sikhs, you will see that they are more ultra-nationalist, more concerned by home-based politics, home as in the country of origin politics, and in a very mischievous and uncommitted manner. Very rarely will they put life and money at stake or significant money at stake. If they have large surpluses, they will throw a little back there. A diaspora element has always been there. In the Khalistani movement, a diaspora element is there in every other minority or majority extremist movement in India today, as in other parts of the world. It is the diaspora which has always been extremely mischievous, and you come to the right explanations for this. These are people who have materially achieved enormous success in these countries. But in terms of status, they remain second-class citizens. Racism is alive and well in these countries. Moreover, they bring racism upon themselves because they largely live in ghettos. So you have a greater and greater inward-looking community going back towards its own imagined cultures. And these are more and more imagined cultures because they have lost the connect with the roots of the realities of the ground. So they are these little bubbles within which this extremist discourse, whether it is a Hindutva discourse or it is a Khalistani discourse or an Islamist discourse, you should see the amount of Islamism coming out of Western communities, diaspora communities, not in India, but across the world, wherever you have extremist movements. So I think
it does very well in Birmingham and in Manchester, probably better than it does in Libya or Lebanon.
Exactly. So I don't think we should make the Khalistani diaspora some kind of unique phenomenon. It is a phenomenon that is seen across diaspora communities across the world. And this is something we have dealt with poorly. And the countries of the host countries have dealt with very poorly. Because instead of trying to understand these communities, they have permitted and encouraged their ghettoization. And they have permitted and encouraged the dominance of these communities by the most strident voices. This, when I speak of diaspora is like this, the diaspora is like that, it doesn't mean that the entire Sikh diaspora or the entire Hindu diaspora or the entire Muslim diaspora in these countries is extremist in its orientation. The most strident voices, however, are the ones that are always heard.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing here. So there is an element. They have kept this Khalistani movement alive. And I would reiterate, as I have done again and again, that as far as Punjab itself is concerned, while the idea of Khalistan is useful in articulating a lot of grievances, because it sort of scratches at a scab, it causes more injury than other arguments or other grievance or other patterns of grievance articulation would. The actual traction of Khalistani mobilization on the ground is negligible. We have this constant refrain coming, and we have data to support it, of the sheer quantum of arms that are being smuggled into, dropped by drones across the border. But how many people on the ground have actually agreed to pick up and use these arms against the state in the name of Khalistan? In fact, if you go through the last few years, all the incidents which are being called Khalistani terrorism have actually been executed by gangsters, by mercenaries, by people who will do whatever you ask them to do for money. And why is that necessary? Why should that be necessary if the Khalistan movement had great traction on the ground? There should be ideologically motivated cadres.
Right.
And the Amritpal movement also. Sorry, just to come back.
Exactly. I mean, Amritpal, whatever else he's doing, Amritpal, whatever else he's doing, never summoned up the passion to run around with a Kalashnikov and plant bombs.
Not only that, but also see how quickly his platform dissipates. The moment they are arrested, the fear was, and that is what the central and state police deployment was for, massive central and state police deployment, that there will be a uprising in support of this man, not as a new Khalistani, not as a Bhindranwale 2.0, as he was constantly being called, but for what he was doing, Amrit Prachar, anti-drug action. Nothing at all. If anything, after Ajnala, we see a tremendous amount of discourse in Punjab on Khalistani extremism, against Khalistani extremism. And we also see people saying, look, why have you taken so much action, such strong action against these fellows? They were fools. Yes, fine, they were abusing people on the internet. But, and the people, there is criticism that a lot of Panthik leaders were encouraging these chaps and have now abandoned them.
Yes. I mean,
I think great need to have a far more detailed and nuanced understanding of the discourse in Punjab.
So a final question. I assume that Dibrugarh jail is not going to be a pleasant experience for Amritpal. He's going to spend a few months, most likely, Assam well. So I assume a diet of rice and yellow dal, which probably won't be pleasant for him. No rajma chal, no curry with vadiya. Does he come out of this time in prison wearing the halo of martyrdom? Or does he come out an irrelevant and slightly pathetic figure looking into the future? I know it's a hazardous business, but what would your guess be? Have we seen the end of this particular drama? Or are the very forces that tried to prop him up and make him a big deal now going to say, guy come out of prison, martyred for his beliefs, is going to emerge as
some minimal narrative of this nature has been there right since the beginning, after the initial arrests of his colleagues, I think 9 people who have already been sent to Dibrugarh. That you sent them there, they are suffering, their families are suffering, etc., etc. I think more importantly, this, 36 odd days that he has been in flight, and the entire state propaganda machinery, the regular leak of photographs, real or imagined, I do not know, real or constructed, I do not know, but those photographs being released, he has been enormously diminished by all this. He has become, he no longer has the capacity, I think, to resurrect himself as a very significant leader. That said, I'd like to just go off on one point that I'd also like to make as far as, this entire saga of 36 odd days is concerned, and the noise that has been made about police failure, etc., etc. That also sounds to me to be rather extraordinary. I just go back to the point that after the Burel jailbreak, Harwara was arrested after 14 or 15 months.
Right.
And Harwara was a convicted terrorist and a man who was convicted for the assassination of a chief minister. So this whole idea that 36 days is an extraordinary period, the failure to arrest him in the first instance indicates something of a botched operation. But thereafter, this build-up over the last month and a half, however it has occurred, has enormously worked in favor of the state and has diminished Amritpal Singh as a potential and future leader. No one can make a prediction. Anything can happen. I mean, nobody could have predicted the rise of Amritpal Singh with the sort of speed at which he actually, comes in August 2022. And by January, February, or before the end of the year, it's the main, face of Khalistan, of the Khalistan movement in India. So we can never be sure about predictions, but I think he has been too far diminished by his own activities and by the state's campaign against him over this last more than a month to actually resurrect himself in any significant measure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ajay Sahni. Dr. Sahni is director of the Institute of Conflict Management in Delhi and one of the people who has followed the Khalistan movements in and outs for decades. I recommend you read his work. And also, if you're interested in these issues, do follow the wonderful site satp.org, which has a go-to place for all things national security. I'm Praveen Swami. Thank you for watching Crosshairs, and we will be speaking to you again next week.